Hopefully you already watched part one in this little mini series. We had this question where we wanted to focus on how to solve a problem, how to go from an idea, or we knew what we should do, and going into how to do it and how to solve the problem and how to work with our solution. So if you haven't watched part one, do that first. Link is in the description. Here is part two. Okay, so that didn't solve the problem though, but at least I have a start. So I just focused on that. I didn't think about how to work with these names at this point. I just wanted to be able to read them. Okay, so now that I can do that, let's go ahead and do something else here. The first thing I could do though is I know that I don't want that extra line feed at the end of the name. So instead of printing them here, let's just go ahead and do this. So this will actually take the name and remove any white space at the beginning and the end and store it back into name. So now name will contain the just the name and nothing else. Just to make sure that this works, we can just print it name here, and we should get the same result, and we do. Okay, so that's good. So the next thing we could do here is to figure out a way to store it into memory. So what we know that we need to store the actual name, but we also wanted a counter for each name. So how would we go ahead and do that? Well, there is one data structure that would be perfect for this, and that would be a dictionary, because a dictionary has a key and a value. So, and they go together. So if we use the name as the key and the value could be the counter, then we could just increase this counter. Then we can ask for a particular name, use that as a key, and get its counter. So that might be a good solution, at least to start with. So let's do that. So what I will do then is, I know that inside here I will need to stick this name and the counter into a dictionary. But to be able to do that, I will need the dictionary when I come here. So I need to create a dictionary before I enter the loop. So I can do it at the very top here. So I call this dictionary names. That's the only thing. So names will be my dictionary of names. That makes sense, right? So what I need to do now in this case is to check whether this name already is in the dictionary. So how do we do that? Well, in Python this is really simple, because I can say if name in names. This will check if this dictionary has a key that is this name. So that means that this is a name that I already seen. So let's just write pause here for now, because the else part is interesting, more interesting actually to begin with. And this is if this is the first time I've seen this name, it's not in names. Then what should I do? Well, for a dictionary, I need to create that pair. So we have the name and the count. So we can do that. So the dictionary is called names, and the key we're going to use is this actual name. So this can be any of these names. So let's say this is Ellie Lloyd. We haven't seen Ellie Lloyd before. So if name contains Ellie Lloyd and it's not in this dictionary, it's not a key in this dictionary, then we can go ahead and create that. So whatever is in name, we will use as our key. And the value for this, we will set it to 1, because this is the first time we see this name. But up here where I wrote pause, this is where we already seen it. It exists. So what I can do then is say that, well, I use the name as the key to go to a particular value. And what I will do with that value is I will increase it by 1. Okay, so if this works now, when we get out on the other side here, we will have a dictionary with all the names as keys, and we will have a counter associated with it. So just to make sure that this is the case, let's do another for loop here. So this first for loop is to go through all the names in the file. The second for loop is to go through all the names in the dictionary. And for a dictionary, we actually want both the key, that is the actual name, and its counter. So we can have two things here. We can say name, and we can say count in, and then our dictionary, names, and we want items. So what items will do is it will return both the key and the value. So let's just print them all first. So let's print name and let's print count. So this will take us through the whole thing and print them all. So let's have a go at that. And let's see, we have lots of unique names here, but let's see if we can find a duplicate somewhere. I have to scroll up a bit. So just once. This could be an indication that we have done some logical error somewhere, but let's go ahead and see if we can find anything. Let's scroll up and see if I can spot something that looks different. Actually, there is another way we can do this that is more efficient than me just scrolling around like this. Oh, there I saw a 2 somewhere. There we have a 2. So that's at least an indication that we could identify some duplicate values here. So let's just figure out a way how to only print the duplicates, and we can do that with an if statement, because we know that if count is greater than 1, then we have a duplicate. All ones will be unique values. So this would give me all the duplicates, and we can see there were quite a few. We have 2s. Let's see if we have any other values somewhere. Well, maybe we have, maybe we don't, I don't know yet. But oh, there we had a 3 actually. So yeah, it seems like this works. So just let's stop and think a second what we've done. First, we focused only on reading. Then we figured out a data structure to store the names in. So that was good. And then finally, we figured out a way to count them and to print all the results. So this video is already getting a bit long, but let's just take this a couple of steps further. So I hope you bear with me, because the next, we haven't solved the actual problem yet, because we want to know how many of these we have. So actually, there is a way for us to do this, because we have our dictionary now. So, and we have this loop where we're looping through something. So we could actually just have a variable here that we call duplicates and set it to 0 at first. And then instead of printing them, we know that we have a duplicate here. Let's just increase duplicates by 1. Like this. That should give us the number of duplicates. Okay, so let's print that. And let's use this f string that we now have in Python. I love them. They're really nice. So we can just say we have, and then a curly brace, and we say duplicates. And then we say duplicate names, something like that. So let's figure out how many duplicates we actually have. So let's run this, and we can see that we have 2,596 duplicate names. That's good. So now we solve the first part of the problem. We know how many duplicates. That's fine. Now we just need a way to figure out how to get the top 10. So we actually know that we do have a dictionary now, and we have the names as keys, and we have a counter as the value. So the question is, can we sort a dictionary on its values? Because if we could, then we would have a list that is sorted, sorry, not a list, but a dictionary that is sorted, and then we could take the first 10, because it's sorted now, the first 10, and that will be our top list. And so if we Google that, we would come up with something along these lines. So let's have a test variable here for now. So let's see what happened if I did this. This is something that you would come up with if you Google how to sort a dictionary. Sorry, not sort, items. So I will have this sorted function, and if you watched the last episode, we talked about the sorted function. So the sorted function will sort something without changing the actual structure it's sorting. So it will give me a new structure that is sorted. So if I use this names and items, I will actually be, what I can provide here is a second argument called key. And key is a function that is used to return back what it should use to sort. So maybe I want to sort on the names, but that is not true. I want to sort on the counters. So we have the names, that will be the first thing that comes back from items, because that's the key. The second name that comes back from items is the value, and that is what we want to use. So what this will do, this will take a function that returns back what we want to sort on. So we can write a normal function and pass that in, but this will be very short, so we can just as well use a lambda for this. So lambda is a function without a name. So we say lambda and x. So x is, not call it x, that's a stupid name. So this is for key and this is for value, because we'll go actually get two things here. So let's use both of them. And then the only thing we need to return back here is actually, because this will be a tuple, so if we return 1 back, we will return the value, the counter. If we return 0 back, we will return the key. So we want the value, the counter here. And then we also want a last thing here for our sorted, and that is reverse equals true, because we want this to be sorted in reverse order. So the highest number comes first, not at the end. Because if we do this, then we know that the first 10 will be our list that we're looking for. So let's just print test and see what we got here. And as you can see, we actually got something back here that is, it's kind of scrolled off the page here, but we have a name and the counter like this, and it should be sorted. So let's iterate over it instead, and let's have a counter so we know how many times we do this. So let's have for item in test, that was the stupid name I used for this. And actually what we can do, we can have this enumerate. So what enumerate will do, it will not only give me this one of these tuples here, it will also give me a counter starting from 0, and I can call that 1i. And the reason I would like that is so I could check when that one reaches 10, I want to get out of the loop. So let's just print item, whatever we got, and then we check I. So if I is equal to 10, then we do break. And what break does is it will take us out of the loop immediately. So this will actually just iterate 10 times on this. So let's run this and see. And okay, so this is interesting now, because we see that we got Tory Mills with 12, Scarlett McMahon with 10, and so on. So it seems like this sorting actually worked pretty well. So that's good. So the first thing I would do now is to rename this test to something else. And we see we use it there, and I'm using PyCharm here. So what I can do is actually I can right click test and go to refactor and rename. So I want to rename all occurrences of it so I don't miss anything. So instead of calling this test, I will call this sorted dict or something like that. And then I hit refactoring, we see they changed it there and there for me. So let's rerun it again and see if it works. So that's good. Now we do get this as a tuple here. So maybe we would like to split them apart, and we can do that by just saying the first item here is the name and the second item here is the count. So something like this. So if we rerun it now, it looks a little bit better actually. So we solved the problem. Great. So the question now is, could we improve on this? We have a solution. Well, one thing we could improve on is, instead of using a normal dictionary, we could use something that is called a default dict. So that could be an improvement, because the default dict will actually help us with this. When we didn't have a matching name and we created this, we could create a default dict that was an integer, and then we could start to just add things, because if the name doesn't exist, it will create it and set the value to the default for integer. So if we have a default dict with int, the values will be integers. So it will be set to 0, and then we can immediately, as soon as we see a name, just increase it. So if we change that, we will get rid of these 2 lines of code. So that could be something, a bit of an improvement. So let's start with that. So the default dict is in a module called collections. So default dict. And to create a default dict, I still want to call it names here, but what I would say, instead of just creating an empty dictionary here, I would say create a default dict and use the type int as the default type for the values. So with that, I could just actually go ahead and delete these 2 lines. So that would simplify my code a little bit. So let's rerun that and see that it still produces the same thing. It doesn't for some reason. Actually, there is one more thing we need to do in this case. Actually, one more line we can remove here, because here we do a check and see that we only do this increment if the name already exists in the dictionary. So in this case, if we just executed this, we wouldn't get any names into the dictionary, because each name we see would not be in the dictionary. So we need to remove this if statement and unindent that one. So actually there was one more line we could get rid of here. Okay, good. So let's try this and see if it works. And we can see we get the same results, so it works pretty well. So that was an improvement. I got rid of a couple of lines just by using that and kind of cleaned up my code. So that was a good thing. So the last thing we could do is to think, well, we found a structure that actually worked better for us. Is there a structure that will work even better? And it is, and it's actually found also in the collections module. So for this particular problem, there is something called a counter. And counter is also a dictionary, but it does exactly this. So what we could do is we could make names, instead of being a default dict now, we can say that this is a counter object, like that. And then we could actually get rid of this as well, because this is what counter does. When we stick something into the counter object, it will do this, exactly this. So if it's already there, it will increase it by 1, otherwise it will create it. So what we can do then is, actually we don't need this for loop like this either. We could put the whole thing in a list comprehension. So we will, list comprehension, we have the square brackets around this, so we have a for statement in there, like that. So this is the for part of the list comprehension. So what we will do here is we could go through them, and for each item here, let's remove that. For each item here, we will do this strip. So this will give me a list of all the names in the file with the name stripped. So it's a list of first, second, and so on. And then we could take the whole thing that we have up here, take this part without the last parenthesis here, and stick it in front of here. And then we take the last parenthesis and put it at the very end, like that. So this will create a list of all the names. We send that to the counter and we store that in names. So that is the first thing. Okay, so the second thing this one can help me with is to figure out the number of duplicates. And again, we can actually use a list comprehension for this. So if we think of it, if we had a for loop that looks something like this, if name count in names.items. So this would give me the name and the count, right? So I just want to figure out how many of these that is above 0. So if I created a list comprehension of this, list comprehension has a filter part at the end here. So if count is greater than 1. So what this means is that if this is true, then what we pass in before the for statement will come into the list. If this is false, it will just continue with the next. So we can have name here. It doesn't really matter what we have here. We want something here, because what we want from this is to know the resulting list that will only contain the duplicate names will have a length. So we can ask for it. How long are you? How many items is there? So this, whatever I get back here, can actually be assigned to duplicates here. So then I can get rid of that. So what that means is this for loop here can go, because that is how we previously figured out the duplicates. So let's get this up a bit, like that, and then we print how many duplicates we have. And actually also this counter actually have a method. So let's write names dot. It has this most common, and it will look at the counters and see the most common ones. So if I say 10 here, then I would get the most common ones immediately. So let's just, that means that I can get rid of all that, and let's see what happens if I just print the most common ones, the top 10 ones. So let's run this and see. So we see we get the same number of duplicates, and then we see we get a list of tuples here. So maybe we would like to print that a little bit neater. So what we could do with this one is to put it in a for loop instead of having it in a print. So what we can say, we see here we get a tuple. So if we have two things here, so for name and count in, we will get one of these. So we'll get that one, and then Terry Mills will go into name, and count will receive 12 here. So then we can just print, sorry, colon here, and we'll print name and count like that. So now it works. And as you saw now, I rushed this a little bit because this is very long, this video already. But we are now down to just these lines that actually does something. And so we had a solution that worked previously with many more lines, but then we found out that there were a smarter way to do this, and we used that to accomplish the same thing. So this is actually how I think you should do it. So, but do it in this way. Focus on one thing, work with that, go to the next thing, work with that, focus only on that. And then you can have this overview perspective as well. So focus on one small thing, go to the overview perspective, think, okay, now I have that in place, what should I do now? Okay, I need that little thing as well. Go into that detail, work with that, go out. When you have a working solution, ask yourself, is there a better way to do something in the code here, and refine it, even if it's like we did, step by step. We went from a dictionary to a default dict, and then we discovered that there's even something that's smarter than a default dict, and that will be the counter. And we use that because that will help us with much of the work that we did manually before. So I hope you're still around, and I hope you thought this was interesting, because this is something that I know that many people struggle with when they come into programming. So I hope you enjoyed this. So please like it if you did, and please subscribe to the channel. And not only will you be reminded when I release new content, but also it will help me. So let's help each other and do something good. And don't forget, if you have any questions that you want to cover here, send it to this email on the screen. The email is also in the description for this video. See you again next week for something new. Bye.